welcome to another podcast. I am today out on a boat, which is unusual for me because I don't often find myself on a boat. I'm on Lady Bower Reservoir again. I've got my double-handed, switch rod really, so you can use it with two or single-handed. It's a double or single-handed rod. I'm in the boat because I'm practicing some spey casting. I love my salmon fishing, but living in the part of the world I do, there isn't much salmon fishing around here. Well, there's none really, and there aren't really any rivers that are big enough to practice spey casting, so you can't really practice spey casting from the bank. You need to be in a boat or stood in the river. So on one hand I'm practicing my spey casting, but I have got a fly on as well, so I'm having a drift round, getting the old cast out and trying to catch a couple of these rainbows at the same time. Sounds like we're due maybe a visit from one of these low-flying helicopters in a second. They come down the valley practicing their low-flying. We used to get the jets down here quite a lot. We used to get the tornadoes, but that's going back quite a few years now. So it's the helicopters and the C-130, the transports, but sounds like there's something rumbling down the valley. We've already had one today, so unless it's just an aircraft coming over low from Manchester. Oh, maybe not. That's a nice cast. That's getting out there now. It always takes me 10 or 15 minutes just to get my hand in again. Oh no, here we come. What's it going to be? I'm going to go for chinook. I like to guess the helicopter. Sounds like a chinook to me. There it comes. You can feel it now. Can't quite see it. It's going to come over the tree line in a sec. Yes, chinook. Correct guess. Two chinooks. One behind each other. Whoa, that's proper low. Good grief. Fantastic. I'll wait till they go past. I love it when the chinooks come over because they were really low. They have the door open, the guy kind of half hanging out, and if you give him a wave, he gives you a wave back. So I always give him a wave from the boat, and I got a thumbs up there on the way past. I think there was a few boats booked out by all sounds of it today, and then people have looked out the window and seen the weather and then thought, nah. So there's not many out today, but as it happens, it looks pretty much to me like a cracking afternoon for fishing. You're not going to find many better days than this in July. Well, that was a cracking cast if I do say so myself. Wind's changing a bit, so it's pushing me away from the dam wall now. Notorious in this part of the world, the wind. Well, there's a big fish just come out. It's notorious in this part of the world for the wind to be swirling and changing, and you just got to keep an eye on where you're drifting really, unless you don't want to be getting too far into the banks or towards the cages without your engines started and ready to go. The worst thing is if you get a fish and you're drifting and you're on your own, you have to try and get the anchor down. It'll all go wrong in about 15-20 minutes when my my arm starts getting tired and I'll start putting too much top hand in again. But I was salmon fishing last in June and not been too long since then. I can hear a few fish splashing about, so at least they've got their eyes up on something. Just untangle this line. That's the only problem with spey casting from a boat, is there is a tendency, if you don't quite manage the line right on the deck, to get it tangled up around the rowlocks and the oars and the other bits and bobs in the boat. Yeah, so I was last salmon fishing on the at the end of June, beginning of June, on the River Tay, and the plan was to do a podcast from up there, but as I mentioned last time, it's pretty boring doing a salmon fishing podcast, because over a couple of days, if you catch a fish, you're doing well, and apart from describing where you are, there's not a lot to talk about, really. At least here there's a bit more action. We've got fish splashing around, and it's not it's yet again not fished brilliantly off the top, this reservoir this year. I don't fish it a lot, but I do a lot of coaching from here, teaching fly fishing, and there just doesn't seem to have been the hatches of flies to bring fish up. So it's been fairly hard for beginners, because it's a 500 acre reservoir and it's 120, 130 feet deep. So unless you've got any fish coming up roundabouts where you're fishing, it's pretty hard to get amongst them. And this is the last 2 years actually that the hatches, I don't think, have been what they should have been. Very few mayflies, and even the midges, which is the mainstay for your trout fishing here, really. There's normally a decent hatch of midges on these places, and there's not really been much midges hatching. So consequently, there's not been much rising, and when they're not rising in this amount of water, they can quite easily disappear. So we've not had the best year, but when I'm doing my coaching, if we catch a fish, it's definitely a bonus. The mission's really just to get them a rod in the hand and get the basic elements to the cast and get that fly on and just start to enjoy fishing, really. That was too much top hand in that cast. You can always feel if you're putting too much top hand in a spey cast, because you feel it in your muscle, and you shouldn't be feeling that ache in your right hand or your right shoulder. Let's try and put the bottom hand in on this one. That's better. Wind's getting up a bit now. When you're spey casting on the river, you've got to be very careful whether you're doing a single or a double spey, just to make sure that you're not casting dangerously and that fly is not going to get blown into your face. Another nice cast. It's fine with this intermediate tip on, but I've got a fast sinking tip as well, and I found that on this switch rod, I think it's 11.5 foot, something like that, and I find that with that fast sinking tip, it's not quite got the beef just to cast it out, so that's when I'll switch to my 13 foot double hander. We're drifting in towards the road now. I'm probably 200-300 metres from the bank, very slowly just drifting in towards the road. I think I've probably got another, something like 5 minutes fishing before it's time to start the engine and return back to the start of the drift. It's very effortless fishing, especially when you've got a little bit of wind behind you. It really is no effort to punch out a line, and it's great for this kind of fishing where you're having to strip back that fly, because then there's only really one cast required to get the right amount of line back out. You're not having to false cast several times and double haul or anything like that. It's just one that'll puncture the rod and out it flies. I'm not going to bother changing flies today and depths and tactics and things like that. I'm primarily out for casting, and if we do pick up a fish, it's going to be a bonus. I know the fish have been up and down a bit recently, so between 3 and 6 feet around that area, so hopefully the intermediate tip and the fly's got a bit of weight on it. It's got a nice heavy head on the front of it. Hopefully that'll get down to roughly the right zone. So the place on this reservoir that you see a lot of the boats hanging out is the fish cages in the middle where the fish are reared, because obviously you've got food going in there and it's going to attract fish. So there's always fish knocking around the cages, but I'm not going to get too close with them today. I might have a drift past. You can see there's already a couple of boats out near the cages that are drifting around that area. Make sure we're in neutral. Off we go. Right, so I've set up the drift again. Thing is, in these places, by the time you've cast towards a fish that you've seen rise, it's probably 15-20 feet away from where it was. It's almost fruitless unless you can see one consistently rising in the same place under a feature like a bush or something. Just in open water, I think these fish are moving and cruising, and you cast it that rise and it's already 15-20 feet from where you last saw it. And the great thing about these switch rods is, if you want to, as the name implies, you can switch to an overhead cast. And they're not too hard on the old arms when you're spey casting either. So I think a lot of the elder gentlemen who've been struggled with the really long double handers have found these switch rods fantastic, because it's enabled them to keep salmon fishing and casting with two hands, and you can still punch a decent line out on them. Like I said, the only thing I struggle with is the very heavy sink tips, which I just don't think you've got enough beef. Maybe it's my casting technique, but from what I've seen and spoken to other people about it, there's not quite enough beef to get those heavy tips out. The other thing about this double-handed casting, it's much like when I'm teaching people the overhead casting, fly casting. It's not all about power. If you just get the technique right and the stops right, and get that bottom hand doing the cast for you, it's amazing how little power you need just to ping the line out. Wind's picking up now, so the boat's drifting a little faster than I'd like it. I haven't got a drogue or anything out with me, so if it gets too bad, then I will I'll simply anchor it up and just cast from the same spot. I've been doing a lot here recently, and I've seen very close in an absolutely whacking great brown trout. I've seen it come out 2 or 3 times, and I bet it's 5 or 6 pounds. And speaking to the staff here, we all think it's probably a wild one, and it's been hitting the perch fry very close in. I've seen it come out and smash fry a couple of times, so goodness knows where that's come from. If it is a wild one, obviously it's been hidden away in the depths for most of the year, and then it just knows now is the time to come out and start whacking those fry, and it's been showing itself. If someone catches that, it will be pretty much the fish of a lifetime for a wild brown trout, for a place like this anyway. They don't tend to get too big here. That one's obviously switched on to feeding on other fish, probably almost exclusively, and it's managed to pack weight on. There's a fish just boiled, not far from where I'm going to be stripping my fly past it, so let's strip it. There's no reason if you enjoy fishing with these switch rods and you're mainly pulling around big wet flies and lures on these kinds of fisheries, there's absolutely no reason that you couldn't fish like this for trout. If you enjoy the casting and the tackle's light enough for these rainbows, you're still going to feel the fight on it. I thought that was a fish just tailing them, but it's not. It's a log just sticking out the water that's moving with the current. I'll be back here tomorrow coaching all day. Hopefully getting 2 more people hooked on fishing. It is a truly beautiful spot to drift around in a boat, even if you weren't fishing. It's almost like you've got big green moulds of jelly that have been slapped down, big green mounds of hills with patchwork quilt of walls and a mixture of grass and bracken and mature woodland, and the trees is a mixture of your firs, but there's some more native English trees as well. Oops. Now I'm looking at the countryside and not concentrating on my casting. So the next podcast I'll be back on the river, and it should be from the River Swale in North Yorkshire, up in the Dales, and there's a lovely spot I try and get to every year up there. So I am heading down to Cornwall in September for the UK Saltwater Fly Fishing Festival. I've done a fair bit of saltwater fly before. I've never been down. It seems to be I think in about the 3rd or 4th year now, but fairly small group that gets together and looks like has a bit of fun. There's a bit of an informal competition and a few little talks on different aspects of saltwater fly. There's one on the fly fishing for mullet, which I'm quite interested in because it's not something I've done a lot of. I've plenty of fly fishing for bass and mackerel and pollock and stuff, but the mullet looks quite exciting, fishing in the harbours and whatnot. I think I've tried to catch them before, and I appreciate how frustrating and hard they are to catch, but I imagine they are on a fly as well. I've tried them on bread and a fly a few times without a huge amount of success, so that'll be interesting. I think one of my loves of fishing is to keep it interesting. I'm easily bored, and but fly fishing is so varied. I mean, take what I'm doing today, spey casting with a switch rod for trout. It's something a bit different. It just keeps things interesting. That's why I enjoy fly fishing for pike and perch and carp, and getting out to the coast and doing a bit of saltwater fly. It's that variation and just pushing yourself a little bit and trying different things and not just following the masses all the time and doing as the magazines say all the time. You need to fish like this or you need to fish like that. You explore and invent and enjoy it a bit and not get too hung up on whether you're catching bagfuls of fish. It's about being out there and enjoying yourself. When I'm out coaching, I'm based in the Peak District, obviously, but I have quite a few people travel up from London and Leicestershire, Coventry, Lincoln, those kinds of places, and they come up for the day and they learn the fly fishing and some casting and maybe catch a few fish, and at the end of the day, but we've got nowhere to fish round us, and I really love today and I love my fly fishing, but I'm just going to have to keep travelling. And the amount of times I say, well, have you got any drains or canals or little ponds here and there with roach and little carp or chub and or things like that in, or perch? And they say, oh yeah, there's loads of that fishing. I say, well, you can fly fish for all those fish. And the amount of times people are like, what? Can you? What? They'll take a fly? And it's like, yeah, of course they will. Most virtually all freshwater fish in this country you'll catch on a fly. Some easier than others, but it's the method that's exciting. Not for me, not the fish that I'm catching. I love catching perch on the fly, even little ones. But if you can find a canal or a drain that has a few perch in, they'll take a fly. They're probably easier to catch than their trout. They're probably going to take a fly more readily than a trout would. A little red bloodworm or a nymph or something like that, just jigged or stripped about or retrieved past them. Roach and stuff like that, and rudd will take a dry fly beautifully, and a buzzer. And buzzers will take all sorts of fish. And you can fish big streamers like woolly buggers and things like that for chub in the summertime. So you can have some great fishing on the fly really wherever you live. It's just getting out there and giving it a go and enjoying it. You're not going to catch as many probably as you would do with a catapult and some maggots and a float rod, but that's not the point. The point is to enjoy the method and the challenge of catching them on the fly. And I think one nice roach on a fly or a nice chub on a fly is worth, for me anyways, as enjoyable as 20 on a maggot. Carp's the other one. How many carp fisheries are there in the country now? It seems every town has someone that's dug out a little puddle somewhere or other and stuffed it with carp. And if you can get permission to fly fish, then that's fantastic fun. Especially if you're trying to catch them on natural patterns and not so much on if you're not chumming the water with dog biscuits or bread and things and trying to, if you're actually catching them properly on artificial flies that resemble an insect. It's fantastic fun, very challenging, but the satisfaction of of catching even a small carp on a natural fly is fantastic. Seems quiet here today. I would have thought there'd be more anglers, to be honest, on a day like this, but maybe the forecast this morning is what's put people off. Oh, yes, we're in. Whee! It's doing some acrobatics for me as well. Let's try and get this on the reel. There, it shook itself off. Never mind. Oh well, at least I had one on the old switch rod. It was only about £1.5, £2, but it came must have come about 4 foot out of the water, 3-4 foot out of the water, and shake the hook out. It nailed the fly though. Actually, I couldn't have set up a better drift really than this. The wind's just stayed steady for me and just heading in the nice speed and just where I want to be. And we're in again. Well, this feels a better fish. Right, let's try and keep this one on. Oh yes. All wrapped up in the line. I want to get the damn thing on. Right, we're on the reel now. The drift's going nicely. I'm not going to hit anything, so plenty of time to play it. Ooh. It's certainly putting up a good account for itself, this one. But they do on the boat because they can dive down as well as swim to the side. The old netting ready. And he's in. Oh, that's a nice way to finish, eh? What we got there? Rainbow. It's got to be £3, 3.5, something like that. Nice fish. Flies just in the scissors, perfectly hooked. And he's got a stab out the side of him. This one looks like he's been a cormorant or a herring or something's had a stab at him, but he's in very good condition otherwise. Away he goes. I've dropped him back. I'm not taking any fish today. Right, that's me done. I can feel my muscle under my right arm just starting to ache, which means I'm just starting to get a bit sloppy with my casting and put too much top hand in. So wind in and head back to the pontoon now. Again, thanks ever so much for listening to the podcast. If you want to find out more about our coaching and learning how to fly fish, it's www.peaksflyfishing.com. And of course, as ever, the shop, we sell a complete range of trout and grayling flies, pike, saltwater flies, they're all there. And that's shop.peaksflyfishing.com. Next podcast should be up on the River Swale in the Yorkshire Dales, hopefully towards the end of August. Thank you. Bye bye.